All right, let's talk about a huge challenge in the cloud world: disaster recovery strategy. We're going to break down how you can move away from just, throwing money at the problem and instead build a smarter, business focused DR plan right there on Azure. Let's get right into it.
So, does this question hit a little too close to home? For so many organizations, the DR budget just feels like this black hole of spending. Money goes in, but it's not always clear if it's being spent in the right places, if it's protecting what truly matters. And we can get stuck in this cycle of spending a ton without any real strategic alignment. And this leads us right to the core issue. The old way of thinking was basically protect everything equally, treat every single application like it's the crown jewels. But the smart way, and this is what we're digging into today, is a complete shift in mindset. You protect applications based on their actual business value and impact. It's all about being strategic, not just comprehensive. I love this analogy because it just clicks, doesn't it? You intuitively know a bank vault needs way more protection than your front door. Well, the key to an efficient and, more importantly, an effective DR strategy is applying that exact same logic to your application portfolio. So, how do we actually do this? Well, it all starts with classification. The very first step is to stop looking at your applications as just one long, flat list. Instead, you need to start organizing them into clear, business-defined tiers of how critical they are. So at the very top of the pyramid, you have your mission-critical apps. These are the absolute non-negotiables. Think about your main e-commerce checkout system or your public-facing APIs. If these go down, the business effectively stops. Customers are impacted right away, and you're losing revenue by the minute. Okay, the next tier down is business critical. Now, these are still incredibly important, but there's a little bit of a buffer. A failure here is going to cause major operational headaches. Imagine your CRM system going down, but the entire business won't grind to a screeching halt instantly. You've got a window, even if it's a short one, to get things back online. And finally, we've got the supporting workloads. These are all your internal tools, things like a development environment or maybe an internal wiki. Yeah, they're important for productivity for sure, but if they go offline, no customers are affected and no revenue is directly lost. Their recovery can be scheduled over a much longer time frame. Okay, so once we have our tiers nicely defined, the next step is to connect them to specific, concrete technical solutions in Azure. This is where the business conversation translates directly into your cloud architecture. This slide right here, this is the whole concept in a nutshell. It perfectly lays it all out. As you look from left to right, you can see exactly how the business impact dictates specific technical requirements. Now, those requirements are really defined by two key metrics: RTO and RPO. RTO is your recovery time objective, basically how fast you need to be back online, and RPO is your recovery point objective. How much data can you actually afford to lose? So for those mission-critical workloads, your RTO and RPO are going to be near zero. And that logically points you to an active-active pattern, using something like Azure Site Recovery for a seamless, instant failover. But then, as you move down to the supporting workloads, those RTO/RPO targets stretch out to hours or maybe even days, which lets you use much more cost-effective patterns like a simple backup and restore. It all just lines up. So, how can you actually apply this yourself? It's really just a simple four-step process. First, you list out all your workloads. Second, and this is crucial, you work with your business stakeholders to figure out the impact of each one failing. Third, you assign them to one of our 3 tiers. And fourth, you use that tier to pick the right, most cost-effective DR pattern for the job. All right, theory is great, but let's see what this looks like in the real world. Because seeing the transformation of an actual application portfolio is where this framework really proves its value. Here we go. This is a super typical before picture. We've got 5 applications, and look at that DR spending. It is all over the place. Just notice how the spend on the internal wiki, which is a supporting app, is almost as much as the customer-facing public API. This is a classic case of misaligned investment and risk. So the first step to fixing this is to apply our framework. We sit down with the business and we classify every single application. The public API, that's obviously mission critical. The CRM, that's business critical. And the internal wiki, well, that's a supporting workload. You see, this simple act of classification changes the entire game. And here is the after. Just look at this transformation. The investment is now perfectly aligned with business value. The highest spend is laser-focused on that mission-critical API, giving you maximum protection right where you need it most. And meanwhile, we've slashed the cost for the wiki by applying a much more appropriate DR pattern. Your total spend might even be lower, but your risk coverage is exponentially better. What this whole process gives you in the end is a really powerful logical framework. So let's package this up into a simple blueprint that you can take directly to your leadership, to your stakeholders, to explain and justify your DR strategy. Here it is, your simple 3-tier DR blueprint. This is the kind of language that everyone in the business can understand. You're no longer talking about complex Azure services, you're talking about business outcomes. Tier 1, you get instant failover. Tier 2, we're back in minutes to hours. Tier 3, we'll recover it within a few days. It's clear, it's defensible, and it's completely strategic. You know, if you only take one single thing away from this explainer, please let it be this. This entire exercise is about two things: dramatically reducing your real-world business risk by protecting what matters most, and completely eliminating wasted cloud spend by not overprotecting what doesn't. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. What is the one workload in your portfolio that you absolutely, positively cannot afford to lose? Start there, think about its current DR plan, and then think about how you could use this framework to make sure it is truly, properly protected. Thanks so much for watching.